Hello, and welcome to Bookish Haze, a podcast where we get to talk about two of our favorite things, Taylor Swift and reading. I'm Katie.
And I'm Sameen, and every episode we're going to take a book or series and analyze the characters as they relate to songs across Taylor Swift's entire discography. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bookish Haze. This week we're going to be talking about Bride by Ali Hazelwood to kick off our Ali Hazelwood series. If you have not already done so, we've also gone through our Emily Henry series just recently, and we've walked through a lot of the SJM universe. So if you've read any of the books by those authors or you enjoy those authors, go back and take a listen. But yeah, before we get started, Katie, what are your thoughts on Bride?
Okay, so I really liked Bride. I wouldn't say it was like 5 stars. I think I gave it like 3.5, but I did enjoy it. I love that she dove into like more fantasy, which is obviously like very out of her normal realm. And I think it's fun probably for her too, but like for us as readers, for her to be exploring different things, right? Like so she had her little YA book, which I did really like. And then yeah, Bride, and then I've Not in Love is I've heard like amazing, even though that might be more in her typical wheelhouse. Um, so I thought it was cute. I've mentioned this so many times. I love a good pining man. And I think Lowe provided pretty well. And I think that there like kind of sometimes the premise was kind of stupid. And also the fact that like there's kind of a lot of parallels to Twilight, and also her name being Misery makes me laugh. So it was just kind of like a silly little book, I think, but in like a not like derogatory way, in a very positive, I had a fun time reading it way. So overall, it was a good read, and I think like it's one of those that is definitely something that would get me out of a reading slump, because it's just like an easy to read, it's pretty quick to read. Nothing really truly terrible happens, and everything gets resolved like super quick. So what did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was very cute and fun. I don't think the world building was that great, but I don't think that the world really needed to be
Mm-hmm.
built for this
Yep.
one. And I think I gave it probably a 3.75, 3.5, something like
Nice.
that. Just because, like, it was cute and it was something outside of her comfort zone. I think I did enjoy Not in Love a little bit more. I know that came out really recently, but I think that one, like, did stick more in her wheelhouse, and I really appreciate that. I also don't think nodding needed to be a thing that happened in this book, but I digress. And also, like, I agree. I think that her name being Misery was kind of fun. It was also a little bit like, I laughed a little bit because I was like, why is her name Misery? And everyone else's name is like normal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's Misery and Owen. Like, how do you pop two kids out and you're like, one of these kids is the fucking worst, the other one is Owen? Um, so that was just kind of my thought process. I was like, I liked it, but yeah.
No, I
Do you want to?
Sorry.
Oh, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say I was gonna bring up nodding, but like, yeah, I think okay, so as everyone who spends time on fan fiction, like definitely am familiar with the concept of nodding, but I feel like she went like extra into it than which like, you know what? Good for her, I guess. But I was like surprised at how much she dwelled on it, let's say. But like whatever, it was fun.
Yeah, and then it ended up in like the New York Times or something.
Yeah, so
So
I mean, it clearly worked, whatever she was going for. It got her more press, and I'm sure more people are
great.
reading. So good job, Ali Hazelwood. But I was gonna say, yes, the world building was like not great, but it was kind of like I guess it got the points of what you needed to across, which is that vampires will be like very easily overpowered if any of the werewolves and humans like had two thoughts about it. So that was the whole
Hmm.
premise.
Yeah, and they were like, they have separate land, and her father is the worst, and there is violence. I was like, great, thank you. We can actually move on now.
Yes.
Well, on the note of moving on, do you want to get started? What did you have for Misery?
Yes. Okay, my first song for Misery was of course had to be about her first friend. So it was The Best Day. I didn't really pull like any specific lyrics, but just kind of the idea of like it's Serena, and they are basically the only friends or people who care about each other. And
Yeah.
all of Misery's happy memories revolve around Serena and like their inside jokes. And The Best Day is basically about a song around how Taylor's mom can help make all like the hurt and bad like experiences go away. which is definitely, I think, how, or, like, what Serena does for Misery. The best day isn't talking about how, like, basically Taylor has no life outside of her mom, but for Misery, it is a little bit about that. Like, Serena literally says to her right when they have that fight, like, "I want you to care about something else other than me." Basically, like, "Please have a purpose," but Misery's, like, job not her job, Misery's life, is basically, like, about hang out with Serena, and not in, like, a bad way, like, Misery, I think, feels fulfilled by that, but Serena is not, but that is why, like, The Best Day, I think, describes their relationship well because for Misery, because, anytime anything bad happens, like, they're sisters is literally what she says.
Well, oh yeah, like I think you're right. Like in that way, Serena is more of like the adult figure in this of like seeing the world as a bigger space and being able to take the time out for Misery versus like Misery's life and like honestly, your life when you're a kid revolves so much around like who you are as like your small little circle and then your parent. And I feel like it was a lot of like Misery had a lot of growing up to do in a way that Serena didn't. So it like makes sense that they kind of had more of this like taking care like mother daughter bond to an extent.
Yes, thank you. For everyone, we obviously took a bit of a break, but also I was in Asia for 2 weeks, so, like, jet lag and getting used to talking again is clearly a struggle, but thank you, Samir, for being so eloquent as always.
Well, talking is always a struggle, even without jet lag. So we're killing it.
What did you have for Misery?
So I kind of also took it on the note of like her outside relationships and also like being in the outside world. So the first one that I did was Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. And I honestly was laughing a little bit on this one because one, like the line of like the scandal was contained, the bullet had just grazed, at all costs, keep your good name. And I feel like that just described a lot of like what we saw her dad do throughout the entire thing of and her like kind of realizing it and then becoming this like honestly the villain in his story. Like
Mm,
she was a little bit badass at the end, and the whole line of like coming down the staircase and like really terrifying everyone in the room, that cracked me up because I was just thinking about like their engagement night when she just kind of like hid away and no one really knew what to do with her, and like she had to be in the room but everyone was going to be quiet and gossiping about her when she was in the room. And then the specific lines that I was like, this really fits was I was tame, I was gentle till the circus life made me mean, where she's just like she was really tame in the human world. She had like a job, she had a 9 to 5, and was like not flashing her fangs. And then there was the line about, "Don't you worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Who's afraid of little old me? Well, you should be." And that piece, I was like visualizing her filing her teeth down. I think she was filing her fangs
yeah.
to like fit in with the human world. So it was like, "Yeah, don't worry, folks, we took out all her teeth." Like she's this exchange person. And then towards the end of the book, it kind of switched to like, "Who's afraid of little old me? Like, why would you be afraid of her? She's such a non threat." And it turned out that she was that huge piece in that takedown and like realizing what Serena was capable of and that she was this like half were, half human version, and like had all of this like strength to take him down.
Yeah, I guess kind of the aspect of her dad underestimating her and her ability to, like, care, I guess, in a sense, because he's like, "Oh, vampire is greater good, blah, blah, blah," which was totally a lie, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so he in his head, I think, is like Misery won't care about, like, these werewolves or, like, sees them as the enemy and, like, lives amongst humans, probably also finds that disgusting, blah, blah, blah. And just, like, how even though she's not, alien style type vibe, it is kind of that more, like, quiet strength that comes out and then leads to the takedown, I guess. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of other factors at play, but the fact that Misery, like, came into the werewolf territory and, like, bonded with people, saved Anna even though she didn't have to. It's that kind of like those moments that like led up to the fact that people wanted to save her. And like, even Owen, who I feel like when I first read before like the big reveal, it was kind of just like confusing to me because I didn't understand their relationship. It was like
Yeah.
they were friends and he was like protecting her, but then he like didn't give a shit about her when she came back. But like suddenly he's back and ready to like protect her again. So I think it's yeah, like she has a lot more impact than it may seem at first.
Yeah. It's not like a cocky who's afraid of little old me. She's like, wait, no, who is afraid of little old me? And
Yeah.
then she goes, oh shit, maybe you should be. Yeah, I agree. Her relationship with Owen was really weird. I feel like that could have used a lot more like character development,
Yeah.
but that would have taken a lot more pages to write.
Yes.
And I honestly don't know where it would have fit in. So
Yeah.
here we are. What else did you have for Misery?
Well, speaking of, complex family relationships, I had Cold as
Mm-hmm.
You for talking about her dad, and I think it's just kind of self-explanatory because even at the end, they didn't have any daughter-father bonding reunion moment.
Hmm.
She basically was like, "I don't care what happens to him, just don't tell me." And
Yeah.
so some of the lyrics I pulled out was like, "And when you take the very best of me, so I start a fight because I need to feel something," which is like, yeah, he literally took away 10 years of her life, and, like, any semblance of being, like, a normal vampire. And so she's difficult, as she should be, which the part when I was like, "So I start a fight," I was thinking about when he called her back to the nest and she like put the timer on for 10 minutes and then was like, "You have this long every time he would say a sentence left to convince me," which was just like good for her. And then I said, "And I use defending words that you'll never say. And now that I'm sitting here thinking it through, I've never been anywhere cold as you." Which, like, that was one of the things I noticed with Misery was that I don't really feel like she ever was waiting or like expecting her dad to change. Like, she didn't
Yeah.
necessarily seem like the um someone who had like, a distant relationship with her father, but was desperately waiting for his approval. She kind of seemed like she got over that pretty fast. Like, obviously, as a young kid being taken away from her home, she was, like, crying for him, but after that, it doesn't seem like she cared. And, like, I think the one moment where it was kind of like maybe she wanted something from him was when they took him down, and she was like, "I wanted him to, like, beg," but it seemed more like because she wanted the pleasure of, like, being vindictive and, like, seeing that moment and not because she actually wanted him to change.
Yeah. She was like, well, he is who he is, so I guess we're gonna fucking have to
Yeah,
fly with it.
exactly. And then the last line, which is just, like, on brand for her dad is like, "Oh, every smiley fake is so condescending, counting all the scars you've made." Which, yeah, I feel like that line just applies to the
Yeah.
relationship because even though he, like, said that he regretted not regretted, I think that he, like, felt bad, I guess, about sending her to be collateral, it was kinda like he would do it again, as he mentioned, so that's what I had.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think I chose on a similar note, like now that we don't talk, and I feel like it was a similar conversation of like all of these pieces of how she felt with her dad. And I think that this song is a little bit more emotional than that. So it fits a little bit better. It's like, yeah, like we get like the betrayal that she had when she was a kid up to like kind of going through it when she's an adult and being like, well, this is who he is. And I also really appreciated, like, I guess again it's like a smaller book, and so there wasn't as much space for like character development, but I feel like that like switch over to understanding like, okay, people are just going to be who they are, was really fast, and I kind of appreciated the speed that that happened because I was like, yeah, like people are just going to be who they are. And like, I know we were saying like for the best day, and I was like, she didn't really grow up in that sense for a little while because Serena needed to kind of push her out the door. I think she was really good about learning that lesson really
Mhm.
fast. But yeah, on that note, now that we don't talk, I think that one was like her relationship with her dad in the sense of like when she decided, like, fuck it, I'm just not going to deal with him anymore. It was kind of that concept of like, now that we don't talk, I don't have to pretend all of these different things, which I know is like, I feel like that's like a really repeated conversation that we have on this pod often, but I think that it still applies here, right? Like, I think it's that concept of like, now that we don't talk, I don't have to do any of these things. I don't have to pretend that I like don't care about these people. I don't have to pretend that like you are a good person. I don't have to make any of these decisions based on how you're going to consider me because you're no longer relevant in my life. And it was like a pretty, like, it was that kind of like quick speech, quick switch that I really appreciated.
You are right, we've talked about it a lot, but I think it's like we get constant examples that align perfectly with those
Yeah.
lyrics. Because when you were saying how, like, I don't have to pretend, I was thinking about when she was in his office and her dad was talking about, like, "Oh, you obviously must have heard about some news where the boys disappeared," or whatever, like, big breaking vampire news had just happened, and she was like, "Oh, yeah," but in her head was like, "I literally have no idea, I don't care, like, I haven't looked into this at
Yeah.
all." And that I think is, like, a lot of the other times, it was kind of these characters who, yeah, were in a relationship and then, like, yeah, faked that they like something, whereas with this, Misery was kind of, like, never really faked anything. She was just like, "I don't care," and so but, like,
Mhm.
it was in a different way. It wasn't like Misery was faking something because she loved her dad. It was more like Misery didn't know anything because she didn't have a relationship with her dad. So I think it's, the same sentiment, but, like, slightly more nuanced in terms of, like, the dynamics between the relationships.
Yeah, definitely. What else did you have for mystery?
Okay, I had 2 more, and Let's see. I think the first one we'll talk about, because it's kinda short, is I actually had "I Look in People's Window," which again, not really any specific lyrics, but I think the
Mhm.
song is a lot of, like, what if and, like, how things could be different, which I think is kind of the story of Misery's life. Not that she dwells on it again that much, but basically, I forget who said this to her, but she belongs nowhere, like, she's not, accepted by the vampires, and she's also not accepted by the humans, so it's kind of a little bit of nostalgia of, like, what if I had grown up like Owen did and just been, like, more accepted, and
Mhm.
that's how come, like, the fact that Serena, accepted her so much and, like, they have all these memories together was, like,
Yeah.
so significant, um and I kinda think, like, she gets that moment of acceptance when she drops Serena off at the end of the book and, like, they run off together, and then she wanders into, her bedroom, and Lowe basically tells her, like, she's not trespassing, like, this is her home, and, like, the only reason he
Mhm.
had packed up her stuff was to get the windows that were fancy for vampires, and I did pull one lyric, but it's, like, the shortest one there. It's just, like, "I attend Christmas parties from outside," and I was like, "This is very much her," because it's, like, even in the human world, she first of all, hated her coworkers, which is very on brand for just,
Yeah.
like, being a person. But it's, like, yeah, it's not like she tried to get close to any of them or, like, wanted to go, to happy hour with all of them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I was just gonna add, like, and she attended like her engagement party from outside the window. Essentially, nobody was really talking to her.
Yeah,
She
good
just kind of
point.
witnessed it happening. I really like that song. I also had that. I didn't
Mm,
have that written down, but I was about to write that one down. I ended my misery songs at "Now That We Don't Talk." But yeah, I fully agree with that one. I was kind of debating between like hers and Serena's,
mm,
because I feel like Serena, for a good chunk of the book, like once she kind of found out about herself and like found out that I feel like she kind of like went through this like character arc of finding out that she was looking through the window and didn't totally realize it. Like I think there was just like that sense of like I don't have family, like I only have this one person. And as we saw, like Serena wanted more for Misery, but she also wanted more for herself.
mhm.
So I kind of went back and forth between the two of them for that song. But I think it's a really fitting song for honestly both of them in just the ways that they were cast out so quickly and so young to be like, well, I look in people's windows and that's how I live my life.
Yeah. No, I think that's good, and I also had, like, when I was thinking about songs, a lot of, like, Serena and Misery parallels, which makes sense because I think they were kinda set up to be that way.
Yeah.
But my last song for Misery was "But Daddy, I Love Him," which I think is kind of, like, in terms of her relationship, makes sense, but also just in terms of, like, what she goes through as a person. Um,
Hmm.
and what I mean by that is one of the lyrics I pulled was like, I just learned these people only raise you to cage you. I just learned these people try and save you because they hate you. Um, and I think that's like, yeah, she was the collateral
Wow.
for her people and was bullied by kids for going and then bullied by them once coming back, which like doesn't make any sense because then you have, all the elders being like, "Oh, well, you're sacrificing for the greater good, blah blah blah." And like
Yeah.
being told that being the collateral is an honor, and she gets kind of caged by that decision. And then meanwhile, all her fellow vampires actually do seem to hate her.
Yeah.
And then, "No, I'm not coming to my senses. I know he's crazy, but he's the one I want. Ugh, but he's the one I want." Which not that she ever
Hmm.
really found Lowe disgusting, but basically, like neither side, the werewolves or the vampires, really understood it, and they found the actual like fact that they were wedding, or getting married disgusting at first. Although I think the wares come around like obviously a lot faster than the vampires do, which is on brand because vampires seem snooty.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you something about my good name. It's mine alone to disgrace. I don't cater to all these vipers dressed in empath's clothing, which is basically what we've talked about around how like Misery wipes her hands at the vampire world, and just kind of wants to live her
Hmm.
life with Serena as a fake human, especially because like we learn that she hasn't been back to the nest and she like got free. And then even with the decision to marry Lowe, which I feel like ultimately becomes her decision when she hears his name, it's, like,
Yeah.
definitely considered a disgrace in the vampire's eyes because they're, like, the mortal enemies, and I feel like she would call them vipers.
Yeah, they definitely were vipers. I also want to note, just because you mentioned the nest, I thought it was really really funny that the nest was like, it was like a high rise, and I just really can't. I still am trying to picture like how that works and like how that could be menacing, and it's just not. Anyway, I just think that visual is really funny. But I agree 100%. Like a lot of those lines like really fit exactly what was happening in the story, and that concept of like being caged and being alone and being like, but this is the best person for me. And like obviously the person that they were talking about in the song was probably not your best choice. But like in this case, it actually rang true. Like it was like, yeah, this was actually a genuinely good decision, and it wasn't like particularly Little Mermaid esque. It was just like this is the right way to go about it, and everyone here is just like not being good to me, so I'm gonna find something better.
Exactly. And speaking of the something better, what did you have for Low?
So for him, I had two songs. The first one that I had was "I Can See You," and my note says, "What a simp." Um, I pulled out a couple of different lines. Like I think obviously the whole like vibe of the song was very like, you know, meet me in the back room type thing. And also like I was rereading like the summary and stuff to like be prepped for this episode, and I was just thinking about like how I think his point of view was always like really simpy, and then just the way that he projected it out was so bizarre. So, and we kept everything professional, but something's changed. It's something I like, and they keep watchful eyes on us. And I was like, all of that really applies.
Mhm.
Like, he did manage to keep it relatively professional, that whole relationship. And it was technically supposed to be like, it was a political
Yep.
relationship. It wasn't meant to be anything beyond professional. And something did change honestly very immediately, back to what you were saying about like his Edward moment and like biting the lip. I was like, oh my god. Also, like there was just so much sniffing happening.
So much.
Um,
Wait, oh, sorry. One thing I was gonna say is that there was so much
yeah,
sniffing happening, and yet she never seemed to think about the fact that he could smell her. Because like, when she broke in and I was like, "Huh?" Like, obviously he'll smell
yeah.
you.
This is also my beef with like this is a tangent, but this is my beef with like a lot of fantasy books where they're like we were sneaking around in like tunnels and this and that. Like I think in like Throne of Glass it made sense to be sneaking through sewers because I was like, yeah, your scent would be blocked by sewage. But also it was like then when it was convenient, like in this book and in other books, it's like when it's like really convenient, you're like, I can smell everything now. I'm like, are you just blocking out your sense of smell? Why is it only there when it's convenient?
Well, that was the other thing I had with this book was, like, when they were in Emery's office and he was like, "I can block your scent." I'm like, "Do you mean just because you're there or because you can, like, magically block her scent all of a sudden?" No
Yeah.
explanation on that part, but I was just like, "Okay, we're taking this a little far."
Yeah, like tell me more about how the scent piece works, where it stops, where it starts. Like, I also think that's the piece about like just when you make fan theories and stuff, it's like obviously we can make all these theories in the world, but if they're gonna like create new rules, then like no one's theory is gonna be
Yeah.
correct, which no one's making the theory to be right, you know, but like whatever.
Yeah, but anyways, sorry, continue.
Anyway, oh yeah, the last line of that was just like they keep watchful eyes on us, and it feels very like self-explanatory. The entire eyes of like the entire world were on them because it was supposed to be like the alliance that saved everyone. And then the other line that I pulled was, "And I could see you being my addiction. You can see me as a secret mission, hide away, and I will start behaving myself." And like, yeah, 100% applies, right? Like he was like, "Fuck, like I am gonna be addicted to her. I have to keep her at arm's length. It's not going to be safe." Yeah,
Incredible.
I think "I Can See You" is just like a really fun vibe to fit because this book was not that
No, it
serious.
really
So
wasn't.
I felt like this was a fun song for
Yeah,
it.
it was. It also, like, I almost put Electric Touch, so like, yes.
Yes.
But speaking of, like, just lack of control, that just makes me laugh because the song I chose was Crazier, which, like,
Ah,
it's just funny because of the title. It's like, the lyrics are still, like, whatever, super sweet, but,
yeah.
yeah, so one of the lyrics I had was, like, "I never gone with the wind, just let it flow, let it take me where it wants to go," which I think is, like, Lowe never really was in control of his life, right? Like, he gets sent away at 8 or whatever age, to Cohen's, and then he goes to college to be an architect and kinda sets up his life in Zurich, but then has to come back to be the alpha once Roscoe goes a little crazy. Basically, I think he does all his things knowing that he might have to do this at any point because he, like, drops everything without a second thought. And then I was trying to fly, but I couldn't find wings, but you came along and you changed everything, which I think, like, I love, first of all, that we get an epilogue from Lowe's actual point of view. I
Mhm.
do love the little snippets too. But Lowe talks about how, like, he wouldn't have said he was unhappy before because, he has his pack, he has Anna and everything. But then Misery kind of shows him that he doesn't always have to be, like, super selfless and he can put himself first
Yeah.
sometimes and they can, like, be happy together. And then the last line I had was, "I watched from a distance as you made life your own. Baby, you showed me what living is for. I don't want to hide anymore." Which, to be fair, most people would probably say Misery does not have a life, but I think it's more that,
Mhm.
like, she was trying to carve out space in the world to, be separated from everyone who makes her life miserable, like her family.
Yeah.
And, like, she starts to actually be herself more at Lowe's and shows him that he can want more from his life than just, like, to be the alpha and, like, have to make all these hard decisions. Like, he can have fun and, like, also have what he wants, AKA her.
Yeah, and when she decided to have a life, she, like, really started to have a life. She was like, "I'm going to do this," which is actually kinda funny because yeah, like, when she decided she didn't wanna be, like, locked away in the house, she was like, "I'm gonna snoop, I'm gonna do
Yeah.
everything." But I do really love Crazier. I also wanna take a moment for the Crazier performance that was on the Eras tour the other day because that was absolutely fantastic, and between that and, like, I'd Lie trending, I'm like, there are so many songs that are, like, just hidden within my brain that
Mhm.
I know that I listened to in elementary school, and I feel like this was one of them. And then I was like, why do I know every single lyric? Anyway, it was a really good performance. It's a really fantastic song. And yeah, I think it fits a lot. Like, it's that concept of like, oh yeah, like I can be something else and I can let go of everything and just like consider you, which is a really sweet concept.
Yeah. What else did you have?
Well, on a less sweet note, I had vigilante shit for him.
Okay.
I think this one goes back to kind of like what we were saying about like all of this responsibility that he had. I was honestly debating between like it being for him or it being for Misery, but I chose to go for him because um, one was I don't start shit, but I can tell you how it ends. Like he definitely had control of a lot of that situation, and a lot of it was like his responsibility and making sure that everyone was safe. Don't get sad, get even. Even when Anna was being like kidnapped and when like all of these things were threatened, he was like very immediately like we are going to get even before like Misery knew about it. um and then the specific piece that I was like, I feel like this is Lowe, was the line of she needed cold hard proof, so I gave her some. She had the envelope. Where do you think she got it from? Because I think it was like Lowe really broke a lot of that news to Misery, and he was a big part of the reason that she found out about it. And she did. She was the one who probably needed that cold hard proof. Like I know that we were talking about she was already pretty like disenchanted by her dad and all of that, but like she also still needed something. Like she was looking for the proof for Serena, she was looking for the proof for this, whatever the case was, there was proof that she needed, and he had that in his hands. And when Lowe made those accusations, he was like, these are the accusations, and this is really how it happened. To be fair, I think like some of that also just came from the pack and like those accusations that got hurled at her. But anyway, and then the last line that I chose was while he was doing lines and crossing all of mine, someone told his white collar crimes to the FBI. And that one I specifically bolded and crossing all of mine because her dad was really just like crossing every line to like
Mm.
start those wars and like get all of that power. And he was like, well, while he's doing all of this and like fucking everything up, I'm going to deal with his crimes in the way that I know best, which like wasn't really reporting him to the authorities because he was the authority, but I stand by that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I like the song. I feel like the first line you said.
I don't start shit, but I can tell you how it ends. Don't get sad, get even.
Yes, I don't know why I just blanked on that, but it reminds me of kind of how, when they first meet, when she is accused of attacking Max, he has
Yeah.
that, like, alpha voice where she's like, "I think
Oh
he
yeah.
is, like, used to getting his way, and it, like, makes me wanna submit," or whatever, and I feel like that's like, that line is like, "I'll tell you how it ends because, like, I'm the alpha and, apparently if 4 guns are pointed at me, I'm not worried about it." Um
Which slay, I
yeah,
guess.
right? Which, I mean, we never get to see how badass he is in a fight because Ali Hazelwood does not write that out, which is a little bit of like, and so Lorcan did because she's just like, okay, suddenly there's 2 white wolves, and then everyone is like dead or hurt or maimed, unclear exactly
Yeah.
what's wrong with them, but there's a lot of vampire blood on the walls. Um,
She told us how it ended.
yeah. um and then, yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's, like, interesting that you feel like Lowe laid out a lot of the facts and stuff because I agree, I think he helped her a lot and, like, added in his, like, perspectives because obviously he had a lot more, werewolf knowledge and also just, like, he's an alpha, so he had a lot more interaction with people. But I feel like Misery actually did a lot of hacking and, like, stuff on her own.
Good.
So, like, I guess to your point about, like, how you were not sure which person to go with, I guess that it kind of applies to either of them. But, yeah, I do agree that, like, Lowe I feel like Lowe really laid it out, especially for Owen too, because like, Owen already, had his planned coup and everything, but presumably, like, Lowe had to lay down the law and also, like, probably fully more explain to Owen about, like, why he cares so much about Misery and all that stuff in order to,
Yeah.
have this ploy set up to, actually get into the nest and make sure everything came out the way it did.
Yeah. To be fair, there was a lot of like drawing conclusions based on things that weren't really said in the book. And yeah, Lowe didn't give her all of the facts, but I think Lowe was the reason that she got any of the facts.
Mm.
Versus like he didn't really get. I think the flip of it is like he didn't really get a lot of like information out of her. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a weird song. It felt like it was a fun song. They were definitely doing some vigilante
Oh, yeah,
shit.
for sure.
Um, so yeah, that was it. What else did you have for him?
I had 2 more songs. The first one I had was "Never
Okay.
Grow Up," which is just, like, an obvious choice 'cause, he was raising Anna. Um,
Yeah.
which one of the lines I had was about, "Your little eyelids flutter 'cause you're dreaming, so I tuck you in, turn on your favorite night light. To you, everything's
Hmm.
funny, you got nothing to regret, I'd give all I have, honey, if you could stay like that," which is just because, like, we get so many songs about so many scenes about Lowe reading to Anna and, like, her coming to him for nightmares and stuff, so it's kinda just, like, reminiscent of that. Um
Yeah.
but then kinda on the flip side, the other lyric I had was, "So here I am in my new apartment in a big city, they just dropped me off. It's so much colder than I thought it would be, so I tucked myself in and turned my nightlight on," which I think is kind of, a nod to Lowe's experience when he gets shipped off to Co Cohen's, pack as, like, a
Yeah.
young child, and then he, like, moves directly to Zurich after, and he was basically kind of, like, alone in the world and had to figure it out. Obviously, like, Cohen sounded great and, like, they have a good relationship, but obviously it's not the same as, like, having your mom. He only,
Right.
like, comes back to see her when she's dying, which I guess, to be fair, he could, like, have maybe visited before, but I don't think he did. And so I think it was, like, a good song to represent his relationship with Anna, but also a little bit of, like, how he grew up and, like, his childhood.
Yeah. I like that this was a rom-com, but there was just a lot of like other relationships that you could pick at. And I feel like they were a lot more like just there and obvious, like this one in particular, and like being able to call it back. I like how you called it back to Anna and also to his mom because I think that they seem to have like a very close relationship, like you said, despite that distance and the fact that I think he like couldn't come back, right?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think it's a really good one, and I think Anna has definitely had her best days with Lowe, which is a really sweet
it
concept.
is.
Yeah, I think it's always cringe when authors try to put children into books, and I think that Anna was like portrayed pretty okay for a 7-year-old. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
is
I agree. I
roots.
think it helped that Ali Hazelwood did not try to make a lot of dialogue for her. Like, the dialogue she did was, like, fine,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of her childness came from, like, Misery's interpretations or, like, yeah, naming the cat Sparkles or, talking about the bouncy house, but, like, not directly trying to write dialogue that made you think that it was a kid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it wasn't like the dumbing down of a child. What was the last song that you had?
The last song I had was "Guilty as Sin," which, to be honest, like, with "Crazier" and "Guilty as Sin," the songs are a little bit like, "Ken only has a good day when Barbie looks at him," but that's on brand for
Hmm.
Lowe, honestly, as we said, he's a simp.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Ken did only have a good day when Barbie looked at him. Let's be
honestly,
so
so
real.
yeah, that is true. Um, so I had, like, I keep these longs locked in lowercase inside of vaults, which is literally Lowe's MO because he doesn't he's, like, so afraid of trapping Misery and taking away her freedom, and so he basically avoids her for a while and, like, just pushes down his feelings. And then even,
Hmm.
like, after getting emotionally and physically closer, he tells her that Misery is not his mate for the same reason that he's, like, been trying to kind of stay away from her the whole time. So he definitely is pushing things down and keeping things locked in a vault for a bit. And then we've already done it in my head. If it's make believe, why does it feel like a vow we'll both uphold somehow? Which I think, like, is funny because we knew earlier the Misery, obviously, that she was Lowe's mate. So although the marriage is a sham, there is, like, something holy to it, to Lowe. And I was thinking about the, conversation they were having, I think about mates, where he was, like, basically saying maybe just knowing that the other person is there is like there might be like pleasure in that too. And so Lowe literally is
What
being
a
read to Phil.
dumbass.
And then the last lyric I had was, "What if he's written mine on my upper thigh, only in my mind?" Which is basically again going back to like Lowe trying to give Misery her freedom because he thinks she doesn't really know like that she wants him, and basically like kind of going back to that self-sacrificing of because, maybe because she drank my blood, like, that's the only reason she wants me, and, like, not because she actually could love him. And so I think, like, this song is just funny because he tries so hard to be so good, but he's, like, definitely not, as we learn from other
Yeah.
scenarios or other scenes in the book. Like, he wants her and she wants him, and he's just being, like, this big blocker in their relationship for a while.
Petition to not have male love interests sit there and try and make decisions for everybody else in the book to make it all better. I'm like, use your fucking words, go to therapy, and communicate, and it wouldn't be this complicated. But that being said, he didn't go to therapy, and I do agree with the song a lot. I think it's a really good fit. Yeah, I think it was like the lyrics itself were really fun, and like he did feel like it was going to be a really guilty concept to like her and love her like that, which like makes sense given the whole like discrimination between the three species. Yeah, I think it fits really well, and it's like, well, and then he has like, and he's like pretty much thought it all through, like as we hear in the song, like she thought the entire relationship through, and like what it would look like and how it would feel and like what all could happen, and like then decided like, yeah, like this is still what I really really want, and it just like didn't serve to make it any better.
Mhm.
And like the outcome was inevitable in whatever way it was going to end, it had to start.
Yes.
But yeah, also the concept of the tattoo on the upper thigh, I think is still really funny, and not a meme I'm going to get, but a meme that I have genuinely considered getting. But yeah, no, I really like that song for him. Did you have anything else for Lowe, or did you want to move on to Serena?
I did not. Let's hit Serena up. What do you got?
So, kind of in line with how you were saying, I think you said the best day, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the best day for Misery and Serena. I had Invisible String, of like the whole thing that they end up friends, and like especially at the end when her dad was like, "Yeah, it wasn't a mistake that you guys ended up like hanging out together, and like she was your only companion through childhood." And so the line that I specifically pulled was honestly like part of the like chorus, but it was "Time carries time, give me no compasses, gave me no signs." There Gave Me No Signs was kind of like true in the beginning, and then I guess like when she started looking for her birth parents, there was a sign, but I digress. And then were there clues I didn't see? Like, yeah, obviously you started to pick it up at the end. And isn't it just so pretty to think all along there was some invisible string tying you to me? And I think that was just like, I think that line I would almost switch it to like when they were in the attic and she found her finally and was like, and they realized what Serena was capable of and that she was half aware, and like seeing that like strength kind of grow in her and just realizing like, wow, all along there was some invisible string tying you to me. And that's why we were best friends, and that's why we were sisters, and that's why this could outlast it, and that's why this can continue to outlast it. And I just thought it was a really sweet like moment,
Yeah.
if you will.
No, I really like that one, especially like you said, the whole reveal that like her dad was actually the reason that like Serena was brought in to be her companion. But like that just because, like, they were, I guess, forced into proximity does not mean they were gonna, like, develop a friendship in the way they did, so I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's just a lot of invisible ties that brought them together, and also, like, made their bond so strong that after Serena, gets kidnapped, disappears, that Misery, like, wants to go looking for her and, like, understands her code, figures out, like, the whole El Moreland thing, and then yeah, everything just culminates into them meeting back up in the nest. So I think that's a
Yeah.
really cute one for Serena. Or well, I guess for Serena and Misery.
Yeah.
But on a less sweet note, I actually had a place in this world for Serena. Kind of talking about what we referred to earlier around obviously she had a lot of feelings and like confusion around becoming or I guess like growing into her werewolf path. Um
Mhm.
but also just the fact that, like, she was an orphan, so, like, the first lyric I had was, "Don't know what's down this road, I'm just walking," and I feel like that's kind of how Serena and Misery approached, like, coming of age. They just kind of were like, "Okay, basically, see you later," and Serena like, to their caregivers, and Serena was, like, embracing it, I guess, like, she was out
Yeah.
there dating and trying to figure it out, whereas, like, Misery was not. And then I also had, like, I'm alone on my own, and that's all I know. I'll be strong, I'll be wrong, but life goes on, which I think, again, not to the fact that Serena was an orphan, but that she doesn't really seem to let that stop her. Like, we never have seen in the book, like, they didn't have a conversation, around, like, the fact that they didn't have parents or, like, kinda let that get her down. Like, I feel like she didn't really feel bad for herself, which was, like, relatable to that lyric.
Mhm.
And then the last one I had was maybe I'm just a girl on a mission, but I'm ready to fly, which I think the mission, when I was thinking about this, was a little bit around, like, trying to find more about, I guess, werewolves and also, like, Liliana, because being a wolf human hybrid and then finding out there's another one, like, she was also a journalist, like, a dog with a bone, trying to
Yeah.
figure out more information, and she went after what she wanted. And I think, like, I feel like the "but I'm ready to fly" applies to the fact that, like, she probably wanted to find this person so that, yeah, she could, like, learn more about it, and we see how well she, like, takes to Juno and, like, feels more about herself, more like herself, like, when she discovers she can shift in the attic and all that kinda stuff.
Yeah, I like that one. I think it makes sense, especially when you put it with like, I look in people's windows for misery, and then you just kind of see like this is another person who feels really out of place, but this is someone who took that feeling out of place and like really did something different with it. Like, going back to that original concept of like Serena really wanted misery to have something more in her life than just her. Like Serena was like, I'm going to have more in my life, and I'm determined to do it, and like I'm not just going to look through people's windows. Like I'm going to find my place in this world and like be really active about it. Um, and so I really like how that kind of connects and like tells a similar story and a similar feeling, but like very different courses of action and very different like characters to take that on.
Yeah, and I also like you calling out because I guess it can be interpreted as, like, a sadder song, but it ultimately, I feel
Yeah.
like you said, in Serena's case, it's kind of more like her not feeling pity for herself and, like, taking her inner strength and the type of person she is and going forward.
Yeah. Taking back the power.
Yes, I think that's what I was trying to say, but I was like, words are not working.
Yeah. No, totally valid. Um, on the note of just kind of like finding a place in the world, are we okay to move on to Owen?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So for him, I had this is why we can't have nice things.
That's a
One, I think it
funny
was really
one.
funny. Just to note, we're recording this on the Wednesday after Taylor Swift sang this for Scooter Braun's birthday. Um,
And then he retired.
it was honestly an icon move. And so for him, this is why I can't have nice things. I wanted to put it, I think like it was a song that needed to go with this book in general, just based on like what this dad did, which I really, when I sat down to put these down, I did not realize how much of an impact like the father had because he was like such a minor character in this
Mhm.
entire thing. Um, but I think it was also like because he ended up being his father's henchman for so long, this like kind of fit and like, yeah, like I've seen you throw your parties, I've seen you do all of this, and this is why we can't have nice things because you want to start this war and you're gonna cause all this chaos. And specifically, the line that cracked me up was, "This is why we can't have nice things because you break them," and I had to take them away. And I was like, "You
That is
did start a
perfect.
coup to take it away." So yeah, I think that that kind of fit with Owen as well. It was just like he probably couldn't find his place, or he had his place pretty honestly laid out, but it just maybe didn't feel as good as it needed to. And it was because someone around him was being a spoiled brat. So
Yes. No, I love that one. It also just makes me laugh because obviously, from what we can tell, his family particularly, but the vampires are bougie as shit.
yeah,
And their dad literally says, like, vampires want to enjoy their comforts. They don't, like, want to know where it comes from. So Owen's like, this is why we can't have nice things because, like, you all suck. So I think that's a really good
yeah.
one.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of whenever someone is like, people don't know want to know where like all of this privilege came from, and like everything just kind of breaks down, like in the Hunger Games and stuff like that too. And it's like, please, people do need to know where these like entitlements came from.
Yes.
You can't be that ignorant. It's not reality.
Yeah.
Anyway, what did you have for Owen?
I had one song and I actually had 7, which was kind of basically trying to get at the fact that for some reason, he changes his mind and, like, well, as okay, maybe that's not fair.
Yeah,
Basically getting at the fact that, like, he wants to protect, Misery and felt bad that he couldn't, I guess, when she went as collateral the first time, which again, going back to kind of the fact that this book is short, I feel like they didn't really build up to that. Their relationship was kind of confused, and I didn't get that at all until he said it, and I was like, "Okay, sure." But anyways,
Yeah.
they
I was like, "Oh, you like your sister? You get
like,
along? This is a
they
thing?"
were all, like, nice, but I kinda thought he was, like, being condescending to her and, like, they just were bantering, I don't know. And then you also find out they were
Yeah.
twins, and you're like, "What?" Um, but anyway,
Get Misery and Owen.
yes.
Anyway.
So the lyrics I had were like, "And though I can't recall your face, I still got love for you," which kind of also made me laugh because it's like she was gone for 10 years, so like can't recall your face. But he does apparently still love her. So, but after they had been separated for so long, but he's still trying to look out for her. And then I pulled in the swing over the creek. I was too scared to jump in, which I think again is like talking about how Owen was kind of a child. I mean, he was a child. He was 8 at the time when Misery had was taken away, and so he was scared of his dad, I'm sure, or like knew that he couldn't really do anything. He felt powerless. But he regrets that. And then I think the last piece I had was you should come, or I think you should come live with me and we can be pirates, then you won't have to cry and hide in the closet. Which is kind of similar to what you were
Cool.
saying about like, he's literally staging a coup. Like, you can come live with me, you can come back to the vampire world. I'll be in charge and like I'll be able to protect you. Which ultimately it seems like Owen, grew up a bit while Misery was gone and like actually had well thought out plans. He had been planning this for a few months,
Mhm.
but also had like gotten the chance to reflect on the whole collateral thing and collateral program in general. And like the fact that she was taken and then trying to make sure that it never happened again and like protect not only Misery, but also just like, other vampire children.
Yeah, I like this concept of like him being affected enough by it in his childhood to like really consider it through his adulthood and like not sticking on to like the childhood naivety because I think a lot of people lose that pretty fast, but like sticking on to some of those like that feeling of like this is the safety that I wanted when I was a kid and this is the safety that I'm still determined to like kind of push forward with. So yeah, I really like that song. I think I like how it spans time, which
Hmm.
sounds really cheesy. But I like how it does. It takes something that you were like, wow, this is what I wanted as a kid. And like that want for like a sense of safety and like sense of play and like sense of joy that you have as a kid, it doesn't change as you get older. It just changes how you get to the point of like being able to find it. And I think Owen did a really good job of like, well, I'm not losing this because I still want my sister back.
Hmm.
And like, I would imagine that losing your like one sibling, your twin, especially when you're a kid, would like really impact how you behave as an adult. So I think the song like really captured that, and I think that was a really good pick.
Thank you. But that's all I had for Owen. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that was it for me as well.
Perfect. Well, on that note, thank you all for joining us. I think that I don't know, that was a fun one to talk about. I actually texted to me and that I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure, if we'll be able to find songs," but I feel like it
Yeah.
surprised me more than I thought. And I like that we were able to dive, I think, more into other relationships rather than just, like Misery and Lowe. Because like you mentioned, like
Mhm.
were a lot of like side relationships that I think were even if they were not fully fleshed out, they were still like fun to read about and talk about. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I'm really grateful for TTPD on this one because I don't think we would have had any songs if it weren't for that album.
Yes, I feel like the Tortured Birds department has been putting in work in the last, few
It really
episodes.
has.
Um, but again, thank you all for listening. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Bookish Haze Pod, and yeah, let us know your thoughts, and if there's a specific Ali Hazelwood book that you would like us to next, let us know that too. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and week, and we'll see you next time.